Welcome to Mystery Writers of America, Northern California. This is Facebook Saturday Live, where authors present short, focused talks on the craft of crime. Today, Eileen Rendahl will tell us what makes a cozy a cozy. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. Eileen, you're on.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm excited to be here. So I have been thinking a lot about what makes a cozy, and specifically what makes a good cozy. I was working on my 7th cozy mystery and struggling with getting it off the ground. And I thought, I should know this better by now. I should know this pretty solidly, but I know for myself and with a lot of other writers, a lot of what we do is really instinctual. We respond on this core level to something, and I don't always know how to take what that is and put it into words. And for me, once I can't put it into words, it's a little hard for me to get it on the page. So I really wanted to dig into the subject. So I feel like I have a better intellectual grasp on it. And so I've been thinking a lot about what makes it for a good cozy, and now you shall all suffer for it. Let's hope it's going here. There. So what makes a cozy a cozy? I am not going to present rules here. I think that the only thing that's really black and white in writing is the type on the page, and even that is sometimes kind of gray. You will find exceptions to everything I present here. You'll find exceptions that are great books, great cozies. So really, these are more observations that I've made about cozy mysteries that I hope to use to guide me in my writing. And I think that you might be able to use the suggestions if you're starting to think about writing a cozy mystery. So what's a cozy? According to Nancy Cohen in her really excellent Writing the Cozy Mystery, which I highly recommend if you're thinking about writing one, a cozy is a whodunit featuring an amateur sleuth, a distinctive setting, and a limited number of suspects, most of whom know each other and have a motive for murder. These stories contain no explicit sex, violence, or bad language. So really, there you have it. Those are the basics. And I could probably end this talk right now and you could go explore that, but I'm a little bit worried about what Lori King might do to me the next time she saw me if I did that. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into each one of those elements and explore how they're special for a cozy. I'm going to start with character. In my opinion, character is about the most important thing in a cozy mystery. Honestly, I think it might be the most important thing in any fiction. There are already a bunch of really fantastic presentations and books out there that cover character way better than I will ever be able to. So you might want to, for instance, check out David Corbett's video here on the MWA NorCal Facebook page about character. Excellent information. I'm going to focus here on a few things that I think set the cozy mystery protagonist apart. The cozy mystery protagonist is an amateur sleuth. Most cozy readers expect an every person type of protagonist, an ordinary person who ends up in extraordinary circumstances and rises to the occasion. A lot of cozy readers want to feel like they're in the story with the characters, like they actually could be one of the characters in the stories. So you want to make them relatable. The protagonists generally aren't super sleuths or hard-bitten cops who have seen it all, or jaded PIs with bottles of whiskey in the bottom desk drawer. The line gets a little fuzzy here and there when you talk about private investigators. But even if the protagonist is a private investigator, many times they're new at it, or they've stumbled into it, or maybe they develop into one over the course of the series. Which doesn't mean that your protagonist doesn't have special skills. Whatever profession our character pursues, let it imbue them with some kind of distinctive talents. And ideally, they can use those talents to solve the mystery. So how would that work? Well, let's say our protagonist is a baker. Maybe they have an unusually discerning sense of taste or smell that helps them solve the mystery. Maybe they also have exceptionally strong arm muscles from kneading bread, or strong legs from always being on their feet. Can that in some way help them find the clues that they need to solve the mystery? Or maybe your character owns a pet shop. Maybe their knowledge of animal behavior leads them to understand human behavior in a unique way that sets them on the road to catching the bad guy. Does your bookstore owner know the plots to hundreds of mystery stories that they can use as possible solutions to the mystery at hand? Or does their shop give them access to excellent research materials? If you're writing a cozy, consider how your sleuth's special skills can help solve the mystery. And take some time as you're writing those chapters to establish the protagonist's expertise and how it comes to play in their life. And you might want to, like in your early planning stages, just make a little list. What are some special things that someone in that profession might be able to do, or how they might see things that would help them with this? So, why is this important? Readers want a glimpse into another world. Again, we want to be in the story with the characters. We want to know, what is it like to own a yarn shop? What is it like to make glass beads? And more specifically, we want the main character to be our window into that new world. So we want to let that profession or skill work its way into how the character speaks and thinks. Metaphors and similes they use might be very specific to what they do. A baker probably uses different metaphors and similes than a musician, and a musician would use something different than a bookstore owner. But really let what they do be part of who they are and how they see the world, so that we can then see that world through them. So not only are they our window, but again, we want the reader to really relate to our protagonist, and people trust people who are good at what they do. So if that helps your reader trust your protagonist a little more, that's a great thing. You might want to think about almost all these same things with your villain. A lot of the same qualities apply. Not that we want to relate to them so much necessarily, but it's possible that those special skills can end up being clues that our sleuth can follow when we're solving the mystery. Also, if you really want to dig into character a little bit more, the villain can often represent a shadow side of our protagonist. So next, I'm going to talk about setting. On the most basic level, setting is the stage on which your story takes place. Obviously, it can be a lot more. You might want to check out Kara Black's video here on the MBWA NorCal Facebook page on setting. It was an excellent talk to help you think about how to create setting. So where your story takes place makes a difference. Is it a small town or a big city, a desert or a tropical jungle? People behave differently in different places, and the landscape around us influences the decisions we make. And you'll want to use that to its fullest potential. One way that you can use setting like this is to help really physically ground your reader into the story and ground your reader into that protagonist, into that point of view character. By giving details about the setting and giving those details through the perceptions of your characters, you can help your readers feel as if they're really in that place or time with that person. You want to stop and think about what it is like to be physically in that space. Are you hot? Are you cold? What happens in your body when you're hot or cold? Are you shivering? Are you trying not to shiver? What about smell and how your character reacts? Not just that there is a smell, but how your character reacts to it physically can really help ground us in that story, in the character, foster that relatability, and really help make that connection between your reader and your character. When you start combining setting and character, you get a lot more options. How your sleuth relates to the setting provides opportunities to show the setting, reveal character, and help solve the mystery. For instance, your sleuth could be someone who never left home, who's lived in that same small town for their entire life. They know every sidewalk crack, every shortcut. Maybe then they're the kind of person who would notice instantly when something is out of place, or if someone is acting in a way that's out of character. Or what might they not notice because it's always been that way and they don't question it? Could those things provide clues or obfuscate them? Maybe your protagonist is someone who's come back to their hometown after a long time away. How might that have changed how they see their hometown? Will they interpret people's behavior differently now that they've seen how other people behave? How might that help or hinder them in solving the mystery? Or maybe your story is a fish out of water story. And your protagonist has to learn the rules of a new place. Maybe the way they question everything will help them get the information they need to figure out who done it. Or maybe the fact that lots of things seem strange will be an opportunity to create red herrings and misdirects. Any of those things give you that opportunity to establish setting, character, and move the plot. So you might want to take a minute when you're developing the setting to, again, make that list that you can have next to you as you're trying to plot out your story. Setting can also help establish character arc as well as plot arc. How your character relates to the setting and what the setting is like can actually end up being a metaphor for the changes that your character goes through over the course of the book. Cozy protagonists don't always change a whole lot in each book, but it's nice if they have some kind of personal growth as they're going through the story. So does the setting change over the course of the story? Does it change because of actions your character takes? Or do your characters change because of the impact the setting has on them? These are all things that you can consider as you're trying to use that combination of setting and character to move your plot forward. And speaking of plot, cozies are almost always closed circle mysteries. That means that there's a limited number of suspects, and setting is one way to limit that pool. That's why a lot of cozy mysteries are set in small towns. That's one way to limit that pool of suspects. If it's not a small town, it might be a microcosm within a bigger place. I always think about Leslie Bidowitz's Spice Shop mysteries. They take place in Seattle, which is a huge town, but in the Pike Place Market, which is a microcosm there. But you can choose a lot of different things. A theater, a place someone works. But using setting to limit that set of suspects makes it all a little bit more manageable. And you want to create with your setting a place that readers want to spend time. The setting of a cozy often becomes a character itself in the series. The town takes on its own persona with specific quirks and atmosphere. And if you're making up a place, maybe especially if you're making up a place, you want to make it specific. Because cozies are often series, you have the luxury of coming back to this setting in different seasons and different situations, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Do they have silly street festivals or funny shops, strange races or charity events, a specific kind of food that everyone there loves that you have a festival about every year? The character and the community are as important as any other aspect of a cozy. While they pick up the book for the puzzle, readers often come back to a series for those characters and that setting. So speaking of the puzzle, we're going to talk a little bit now about the crime. A lot of cozy readers are in it for the puzzle. They want to solve the crime along with the amateur sleuth. Again, that's part of why they want to be in the story with the sleuth so much, why you want that relatability and you want that physical presence in the story. But because they want to solve the crime along with the sleuth, they expect fair play. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Detection Club's 10 Commandments. I don't agree with all of them, but this one I really do feel is important, especially in a cozy. The detective must not light on any rules which are not instantly produced for the inspection of the reader. That means you don't want to have the character who opens an envelope, reads the letter and says, aha, now I know, without letting the reader see the contents of those letters. It's not fair play. As I mentioned before, cozy mysteries are almost always closed circle mysteries. Somehow circumstances have created a situation with a small and specific pool of suspects. People could be trapped in a ski lodge by a snowstorm, or there's something at the scene that makes it clear the victim knew the perpetrator, or they're limited by geography. However you do it, we have a finite number of people who could have committed the crime. And in the interest of fair play, again, according to the Detection Club, the criminal should be someone mentioned in the early part of the story. That means no just dumping someone in at the very end saying, aha, it was them. You need to give the reader a chance to have come to suspect that person as well. Tone is very important in cozies. They can be funny, they can be serious, they can be somewhere in between. Again, tone is something that a lot of other people have covered well. If you want to hear about how to make something funny, I highly recommend Heather Haven's video here on this Facebook page. If you want to talk about mood and tone, Katrina McPherson has an excellent video here also on the site. But the most important thing for a cozy is they are not bloody, they are not graphic. Violence happens off the screen. Sex happens, if at all, off the screen. If you have it at all, it is very much a wink and shut the door kind of thing. But even though you don't want the violence and you don't want a lot of blood and gore, you do need to describe that crime scene. It is still important. You can put any number of clues at the crime scene, but there should be at least one there that can start our detective on the path to solving the crime. The detective may continue to come back to their memories of the crime scene to find new avenues to investigate, or that first clue might lead them to the next, which leads them to the next. Or you can use a hybrid of those two methods. The detective can follow a lead from one clue to the next until that avenue dead ends, and then return to the scene for the next clue to send them on yet another path. The crime is usually a murder, but not always. There can be thefts or kidnappings. Sometimes the crime can be through really clever methods too. They might not even look at like murders did first of all. Remember, whoever did the crime is someone who's known. They'll want to have done whatever that crime is in a way that directs suspicion away from them. Maybe the crime is staged to look like an accident. Maybe it's a locked room mystery that seems completely impossible, so nobody could have done it. Or maybe it's staged to look like someone else did it and it's a frame job. All of those elements provide reasons for our sleuths to solve the mystery. Somehow those special skills that they have help them see something that the authorities don't. So it falls to them to help solve the mystery. Which brings me to my last thing that I want to talk about cozies today. Cabot Cove syndrome. It's a phrase that was coined to use to describe the number of murders in the TV show Murder, She Wrote. It was a small town in Maine, I think, and there were a lot of murders for one small town. The reasons that dead bodies keep littering the path of bookshop owners, popcorn poppers, cupcake bakers, knitters, and the like is often a bit flimsy. You probably want to at least give a nod to whatever that reason is and to why it falls to your amateur sleuth to solve the problem. But I don't think it really has to pass the test of verisimilitude. Other genres have to. I wish I could remember who I heard say this. It was at the Left Coast Crime in Arizona a couple of years ago. So if you said it, or you know who did see it, please, who said it, please let me know so I can credit it properly. Basically what they said was, what they did was take a step back from the nitty gritty of writing a mystery to see these books in a larger context. And what they said is this: if someone picks up a cozy mystery and doesn't think the amateur sleuth should be solving the mystery, they have chosen the wrong genre to read. Getting upset that an amateur sleuth is solving mysteries in a cozy mystery is a little bit like getting upset that there's a happy ever after at the end of a romance novel. It is fine not to like the genre. Just go read something else. So that's it. Those are my observations on what makes a cozy, and what makes a good cozy. Glenda, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we do. This is from Melinda Curtis, and she asks, how soon does the crime need to happen?
First of all, hi, Mel. I've seen this go a lot of different ways, and I think that there's a little bit of your own personal taste in this. I happen to be one of those people who wants a crime happening pretty darn fast. If I've picked up a murder mystery, I want a dead body in the first chapter. If they're going to go through a portal to another land, I want the portal in the first chapter. But like I said, there's a lot of exceptions to those things. I've read Ellen Byron comes to mind for the first book in her Cajun mystery series. Your chapter's in before that murder happens, and it works. It's just a delightful book. I will say that if you're waiting a long time to have that murder happen, you need to create a little bit of unease. That idea that something bad is coming, you want to do a little bit of foreshadowing. Otherwise, I think your reader might get a little impatient.
Okay. Other question. Let's see. From Grace Koshida, can you have a cozy thriller hybrid?
Well, I think you can do anything you want to do if you do it well. I think that would be, I can see some common things there that you would work on. I mean, you're both in a thriller. A lot of times you're in, I was about to say you're in a single point of view, but that's really not true. I think it would be a little bit tricky just because thrillers tend to be a little, have a little more at stake. There tends to be a little bit of a bigger picture than the sort of individual thing from a cozy. But I think you could definitely borrow the pacing of a thriller and put it in a cozy, or you could borrow the very personal thing where the suspects are all known and put that into a thriller as well.
Okay. This is from Ellen Kirschman. Would you consider a police psychologist who treats cops an amateur sleuth?
I would probably put that more in a profession, like more of a professional as well. But I'm not sure you have to necessarily limit yourself with that. I feel like I mean, my knee jerk is that, oh, that falls really probably better into a procedural or a thriller category. Just there's a lightness to cozies often that I think, as heavy as the topic of PTSD for police officers is, might not really work together. But you might really just be talking about labels there. And I think that might be something you could kind of ignore if you wanted to.
Out of curiosity, this is a question for me. Do you use actual locations, or are they fictionalized? You know,
Yes.
when you were talking, you can use, you can develop this little community that has funny streets and unique, street fairs. So I'm curious what you do.
All of my cozies have been places that are made up, but only lightly made up. They definitely have very strong resemblances to real places. Katrina and I often joke about the books that I write that take place in Schmavis rather than Davis, where I live. Just because, that like small university town is such a convenient place to do these things. I like to have it at least be a somewhat fictional place, because there's a lot of times that I'm going to want to take liberties. I might want to move something around. I might want to make a city official not a very good person. And I just don't want to kind of mess with that too much.
One other question. I know you talked a little bit about how sex is or is not handled in your book. How do you handle sex, if there is any?
So my first cozies that I wrote, the editor I was writing with them had been my editor when I was writing paranormal romance. And she was, I think, letting me get away with a little bit more than I might have otherwise. But it was still, I think the first book they managed to kiss by the end of it. Second book, there was more, but it was definitely like, it was alluded to, and that was it. No more than that.
Okay. When you're writing these, what is the most difficult thing for you in putting together a new manuscript?
Structure, 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 structure. It is, I do not think in a linear fashion. So it's really difficult for me to kind of figure out how to put all the different pieces together. I end up a lot of times with what is very much kind of like a mind map with like, I mentioned in the talk about making lists, and I'll have like 10 different ways that my protagonist might discover something, and 10 different scenes that would reflect that, but I have no idea what order to put them in. That would definitely be my biggest struggle.
Okay. Well, that's it for the questions. So you could, whatever you might like to close with.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. If you are not members of MWA NorCal, you might want to consider joining it, because we have a ton of great programs like this. And I hope you have a wonderful Saturday.